You may have seen my recent videos where I used Gojo solo to take on the formidable foe battle Jogo, and I beat him fairly handily. And then I also did another video where I used Gojo and got a second turn ultimate with him, which is very crazy. This is the character in the game that is one of the most broken character in the game at the launch of Global, and he actually ages well all the way to the current time in JP at the first year anniversary. He is still top tier. So today we're going to be doing a character guide for the best way to optimize your recollections for this guy, what materials you want to farm, and also the best teams that you can put this character on to maximize his potential. So before we get into this, I do want to give a shout out to the JJK Phantom Parade community server. It is linked in the description below. I did not make this, but I'm going to go over it and I'm going to explain what I agree with and what I don't agree with, and hopefully this will help you guys out when trying to build up your Gojo so that you can clear some of that hard content in the game. So first off, materials that you're going to want to farm. If you haven't already farmed these or started this in the game, you're going to want to farm Flat Container and Bell Waist Ornament. I will try to get these build guides out maybe before characters come out, so that way you guys can farm the materials in the future, hopefully. It depends on if they continue making these in the Discord server, because I really like this format. I could make a character guide without these, of course, but I think this is really nice. So I just have to once again give them props. Like, shout out to the person who's making this, Ace, in the I think Ace is making it, at least Ace is posting it in the community Discord server. So absolutely freaking phenomenal. I love these. So the skills for upgrade priority, this is important because when we get auto mode changed in the future, it is going to prioritize skills based on how they're upgraded. So your number one skill priority is going to be your ultimate with Gojo, so that whenever he gets his ultimate, he actually uses it, because that is his biggest damage dealing skill, and it's absolutely insane. His skill 2 is the next one you want to upgrade. That way he will actually buff himself. And then you want to do, I agree with this, JP says a little bit differently. JP says you should do this skill next, which is his skill 2, but I think you should upgrade his skill 1 third, or before skill 2 at least, because I feel like I've used this much more than I've ever used skill 2. So if you don't know what these skills do, skill 1 here is Jujutsu damage, whereas skill 2 is Taijutsu damage. And I feel like more often than not with the recollections that you're equipping to Gojo, they are buffing his Jujutsu damage, so you're actually going to be able to buff this skill more likely than you're going to be able to buff this skill, just in my opinion. So I would say that this upgrade order is correct, and I like this upgrade order better than what I saw on the JP website. Now, that's not to say that the JP website is wrong. Sometimes you want to upgrade this first because you need a good mixture of Taijutsu and Jujutsu damage. Sometimes you need that Taijutsu damage, so it does make sense to upgrade this once in a while. But for my personal opinion and uses so far on Global, I think that upgrading this skill is better. Now, as for memories, they have a couple of memories here listed. They have 4 summonable or gacha memories. You can only get these from the gacha. Now, the key is they are obtainable from the base gacha that is always there. So if you don't get them right away, you always have a chance to get them later, which is nice. And then you have the free-to-play memories over here. And just going back to the gacha memories really quickly, I do have to say you can get them later with free tickets. So you can eventually get these for free, all of these memories or recollections, if you just wait long enough. So the very first one is non-standard. Non-standard is the most broken recollection in the game. It is the absolute number 1 recollection you are going to want to put on this Gojo, or realistically pretty much any Gojo down the line. The number 2 most broken recollection out of all of these, or like really in the game for a damage dealer, in my opinion, is Pride. Pride is insanely good. This is the actual recollection I used to beat Jogo. Pride in that particular case where I did that video was more beneficial to me than using non-standard. So sometimes Pride can be better than non-standard, because Pride gives you an even bigger damage boost when you're below 50% HP, which could be really insane. And then we also have Adult Time and Memories in a Nook for summonable memories or recollections. In my opinion, Adult Time is just a decent all-around recollection. It's not too crazy, but it is okay. And then Memories in a Nook is the best defensive recollection you can put on Gojo to use him as a defensive character. It can really like save you in a lot of different battles and scenarios. It's really good. And then last but not least, we have a Magnificent Stride Forward, which is like a lesser version of non-standard. It's only a 60% Jujutsu boost, and it has a 7-turn cooldown versus a 6-turn cooldown, so it's not quite quite as good. So just to show you guys what all of these recollections are and what they do specifically, let me start with non-standard and show you. So non-standard, when ultimate skill is activated, increases own jujutsu damage by 80% for 1 turn, 1 time. That is going to be a massive amount of damage for Gojo when he uses his ultimate. And remember, his ultimate is an AoE skill. And then if you limit break it to level 1, which I highly recommend if you get a versatile recollection, that you put it into this particular recollection. If you have it, you should absolutely be limit breaking this to level 1. At the start of each wave, fill his own ultimate gauge by 200. That is massive on Gojo, because that's going to allow him to get more ultimates before he leaves on turn 7. That's the biggest disadvantage to Gojo, is him leaving on turn 7. And then the next memory, like I said, memories in a Nook, is the best overall defensive recollection in my opinion. So when command skill is activated, grants taunt status to self for 2 turns. Now there are other recollections in the game that will grant taunt status, but it says 2 times instead of 2 turns. 2 times and 2 turns are 2 completely different things. When it says 2 times, that means for 2 hits. If it says for 2 turns, you will block every hit in those 2 turns. So this is one of the best recollections you can put on Gojo. And then if you limit break it to level 1, when critical hit is performed, decreases all allies damage received by 12%. So additional damage reduction if Gojo lands a crit for the rest of your team, which is still pretty useful. So I really like this recollection in terms of a defensive recollection for the character. And then next up we have Adult Time, which is like kind of the all-around okay one that I talked about. When command skill or ultimate skill is activated, increases own damage dealt by 70%. Typically, when it increases like Jujutsu damage or Taijutsu damage, for example, like non-standard increasing Jujutsu damage, it's a little bit better than just increasing flat damage. So that's why I would use the non-standard over this one. Also, the percentage is higher on non-standard. But then the additional effect unlocked at limit break level 1, when critical hit is performed, increases all allies' critical hit rate by 10% for 2 turns. So just another way to give allies a boost and crit as well. So Adult Time is one of those recollections that I have always really liked ever since it came out, and so I do think it is fairly decent. And then moving on to the final gotcha recollection, a magnificent stride forward. I actually recently just pulled this one, and I'm actually pretty happy I pulled it, but at that point I had already had the Pride recollection and non-standard, so it's like it wasn't as hyped to me. When command skill or ultimate skill is activated, it increases own jujutsu damage by 60% for 2 turns, as opposed to Gojo's 1 turn on non-standard. So that's the trade-off. It's a lower percentage, but you get it for 2 turns. And the cooldown on this though is 7 turns, so it's a little bit higher than non-standard, which is 6 turns. And then at the start of battle, if you limit break it to level 1, recovers own cursed energy by 10, which I think is okay. That part's not that great, but this part of just being 2 turns is actually pretty good. And if it wasn't 2 turns, honestly, this recollection would be kind of mid, but because it's 2 turns, it makes it halfway decent. And then now for the free-to-play memories or recollections, Pride and Night of Jujutsu Sorcerers. Most people hopefully know what Pride does, but in case you don't, really quickly, there is a pre-adjustment and a post-adjustment form. We are on the pre-adjustment form, so keep that in mind. Some things change a little bit between these, okay? So pre-adjustment, when command skill or ultimate skill is activated, increases own jujutsu damage by 55%, 2 times. Times being the key word. Remember how I talked about times. And then at the start of a turn, if own HP is 50% or below, increases own damage dealt by 30%, 3 times, once again, not 3 turns, at limit break level 1. Now, post-adjustment, it turns that into 8 turns 2 times, 8 turns 2 times. So each turn you'll have 2 times, so that makes it better, right? That's the only thing that really changes here, but it makes the recollection a lot better, so you can use it for multiple turns, multiple times, which is significantly better. It's a big buff to this particular recollection. When that comes to the global side of the game, I don't know, but it's on JP. So right now on global, we are playing with the pre-adjustment form, which is still not bad. This is still the one of the best recollections in the game. I dare say the best recollection in the game. Might almost be better than non-standard. Depending on the scenario, I would say it's tied realistically. And then last but not least, we have an SR recollection, kind of more of your free-to-play option. Night of Jujutsu Sorcerers, or the easy free-to-play option, as I say. Pride is a free-to-play option too, but the easy free-to-play option, Night of Jujutsu Sorcerers. When command skill or ultimate skill is activated, increases own Jujutsu damage by 30% for 2 turns. So once again, that can be useful on Gojo. 30% isn't as crazy as the other ones, but it is for 2 turns, so that's okay for an SR recollection. And if you limit break it all the way to level 3, it becomes 35%. And at level 1, at the start of battle, decreases all allies damage received by 10%. So you also give damage reduction to your allies. So it's a pretty decent SR Recollection. I do think all the other ones are better, but if you're looking for an easy to obtain, free to play Recollection, this might be the one for you. Now moving on to teams and breakdown. I'm going to start with teams over here. So there's the Gojo budget hyper carry and Gojo carry with battery. I like both of these teams because they actually both scale into the future and are still useful in the future of the game, because Yaga and Nanami like literally still have not fallen off on JP. I don't know if they'll ever fall off just because they're insane buffers. And then Toge Inumaki is actually insane with his ability to stun and give ultimate gauge. Giving ultimate gauge to Gojo is really good because that allows him to get his ultimate back faster. Using this character is actually how I got a 2-turn ultimate with Gojo, so this is actually really, really good. And then Nishimiya here is an okay character. She'll fall off. She'll be able to be changed out with other characters in the future, but still this team is fairly decent right now. Both of these teams are available right now on global, and all these teams that I'm going to show you guys are available on global right now. They are the best teams in general, I would agree, on global, but that will change as more characters come out for the game. Now, as for the breakdown, what does Gojo do? He deals tons of damage with high attack stat, high skill damage multiplier, and self-buff skill. That self-buff skill, by the way, absolutely insane. If you upgrade it, the amount of extra damage he's giving himself is crazy. He's also able to spam skills with all skills at 1 curse energy. If you never noticed that, he can use all of his skills whenever he wants. He can just do whatever he wants. That sounds like Gojo. And he's invincible to enemy damage and status effect with the passive skill, meaning he can't be damaged unless it's in a domain. That's important to note. Like Jogo's domain, he can be hit. He is tanky in nature with a high stat, passive skill, and taunt recollection, so he can be a tank, in other words. He's not good for long fights, as he will leave on turn 7. So any of those like foe battles that say complete this within 10 turns, if you're using Gojo, you actually have to complete it within 7 turns, so you just make it even harder for yourself. But the trade-off is kind of worth it because he's so freaking broken. You can actually get it done in 7 turns. And then he's also able to use his ultimate quickly with certain memory and team setup. Yeah, like this team setup right here. This would be a team setup that let him get his ultimate fairly quickly if you put ultimate recollections on these two characters. And then last but not least, in the enemy's domain expansion, Gojo will, there it is. Gojo will receive attack damage from attack. So keep that in mind as well. Now, this person also did list a bunch of other potential teams for global, which I really like. And I wish there was more guides like this with the teams and stuff, but here it is. So we got the constant buff team. Kaido is really good. These two are giving buffs. You have Kaido to buff with his ultimate when Gojo does his ultimate, and then you just do big damage right here. I've used this team many times. It works really well. You have a buff recollection right here on Nanami. This gives 10% attack to all allies. This is another buff to give, I believe it's 35% or 30% ultimate gauge to allies, depending on where you have it limit broken to. So a lot of really good stuff going on right there with that particular team. I do think this team will be useful into the future if you want to build up these characters with Gojo. Full buff Gojo team, once again, same thing. We're just switching out Kaido for Nishimiya. I think the first team is a little bit better. Nishimiya is okay, but I still think the Kaido team is better. And then buff and debuff. This is another very good team I've used a lot. Inumaki is a very good rare character with Kaido, both of them together. He is able to give ultimate gauge. Kaido keeps his cursed energy up so he can consistently give ultimate gauge and defense to the team. And then with this recollection, he's going to give attack to the team. A lot of good stuff. And then you're using pride here to buff Gojo. Just really good stuff. And then for the burst then sustain team, this is just an optional team. So you're not running a buffer on this team is the main difference. Like here you're running Yaga. Here you're taking out the buffer and you're running these two characters to give ultimate gauge quickly. And then you're going to run 2 attack damage characters to do their ultimates. Now my recommendation for this attacker slot is actually not down here in the attacker recommendations, because there is attacker recommendations for whenever you guys see attackers up here, which are these characters down here. My recommendation is none of those characters for that particular slot. I would actually recommend for this slot putting in the new Megami if you have him, because Megami is an insane attacker who does a lot of damage on his own, but then he can also buff your allies. So the faster he gets his ultimate thanks to these two characters in the front, the more he's going to be able to help Gojo out, and the more damage Gojo is going to be able to do ultimately. So I think that's the best way to like maximize Gojo's potential, at least right now on global, is to run Gojo with Megami. Like I truly do in the long run. And then next you have the Inumaki battery. It's just once again 2 buff characters, and instead of running Kaido like we did at the very first team, we're running the 2 buff characters in Inumaki to give the ultimate gauge back faster. And then last but not least, Gojo tank support is where they put Gojo on a sub slot for some reason. He can be in a main slot with this support recollection as well. Basically, you're just using Gojo as your defensive character. This is probably the team I agree with the least though, because I don't know in what circumstance we're really using these 2 characters. They're okay, but like there's better ways to do this team build with Gojo as your defender type tank, in my opinion. But overall, Gojo can be a pretty good tank. So these are all really good teams except for that last one, which isn't terrible, just not my cup of tea. So yeah, let me know what you guys think of all these teams down in the comments. Let me know what you guys think of the character guide, and let me know which one you want to see next. Do you want to see Yuta? Do you want to see the other starter characters, Megami? Do you want to see Maki? Do you want to see the free-to-play characters like Jogo or Hanami for when they come out, or when we're actually able to purchase them, I should say. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. Peace.